finally display an image. So I will take my scene game and I will just display an image. So let's use the Reveries API to do this. So in the Reveries API, we are given this cheat sheet, and I think there is a section with textures, shapes, textures. Okay, load image. I think I have load texture somewhere. Yeah, here, load texture. So it will give me a texture 2D. And then, so I suppose it will load it into the GPU memory. So this should be a handle for the GPU. So I just have to store this somewhere. And then I can draw this texture. I have a lot of way to draw it. So the most simple way is to draw it with a position or a vector. Okay, fine. So let's do this. So here I will, no, not here actually. Yes, here actually. It's the same game. Okay, fine. So here, private. So first I will just try to draw it. So I will store a texture 2D. I need to import Reveries. Okay, I will store the texture 2D. This should be fine. And now I will load it in the load function. So texture equal load texture. And my file will be assets slash, so I think bg sunset, bg sunset.png. Okay, this is loaded. Now I just have to draw it. So, oh, actually, I'm not sure it will draw something if I draw it here. So let's try it. Draw texture. And I will draw it in the middle of the screen, so it's this. So for now I'm just computing it, and I do this better next time. And the color, I think the color should be something like white. Okay, let's see if it works. Oh, it doesn't. But I was expecting something like that, because I'm drawing from the game code. I think I should be drawing from the engine code in the renderer. So here I will create a draw texture function that will just forward draw texture. And I need to expose it. I suppose to void texture. So it will use texture 2D. I think it is a struct actually. It should be a struct. It will be x, y. I'm not sure it is an int or a float. It is an int and color. And this should be also integrated here. Okay. And now I will use texture 2D. Okay, so it should be texture. That's right. Okay, it's better now. Don't need this anymore. Okay, fine, and I will just call draw texture here. X, Y, color. Sorry. So it's just a wrapper around it. Not the front end now. Oh, okay, because it's very deep. Okay, it's not happy because I'm using the same command, so I think I should include this in the namespace. Now, maybe everything should be in the namespace because I will forward everything. What's in? Yeah, I actually don't need a class for this renderer. Okay, so I will create a namespace. Let's put those functions in the namespace. Okay. This should be exported actually. And so render so I don't need a renderer anymore in my engine now. I can delete this. And now, but now I don't need to call render either. So should I pass a renderer? Oh, it should be okay if I export it. So I just have to change draw to. Okay. And here I can remove this too. Oh, and in scene too. So I don't need this anymore. Yeah, as you can see, I'm not planning that much when I create my code. Okay, and so now I should call draw texture, actually render draw texture. Why does it? Maybe it's not exporting for now. So if I go to renderer, okay, GAPI draw texture, void. Here I could just create the namespace, it would be easier then. And I don't need this anymore. Okay. So in my engine, everything's good. and here should be okay. So now what's the problem here? Oh, but I think I need to actually include renderer here. Gamey renderer. If I don't want this to load, okay. Okay, so game draw. So it's looking for game draw somewhere. Maybe I just have to clean my code. Okay, yes. So it's not better actually. So the file is loaded. So let's see if I don't draw anything. Actually, it doesn't work either. So maybe this loading should also happen from the renderer. So it could be a good occasion to create the scene manager actually. So let's keep a comment about that. And now I should implement this. So I should implement an asset manager in order to load the data from the DLL, from the engine. So, well, let's create it. Okay, so let's create a class. I will call it asset manager. Asset manager. Okay. This is in the engine. So I want this name. And okay. What would I want from an asset manager? I would actually want it so I would have public things and private things. First, I want to store assets in it. So in order to store assets, I will use a map of strings and so that I want to store. Here, the data I want to store, if I look at it, I suppose I can look at it somewhere. Let's go in the renderer here, texture. Okay. So this contains the OpenGL ID and some data about the texture. So I could do two things. I could either copy it or store it and pass it as a pointer. Because there is no real data in it actually. No real EV data, I mean. This contains data, but not this. So maybe I should copy everything each time. Yeah, I think I could copy this data. Okay, so I will include a map, another map. And here I will store and using it, actually I don't want to write std, using std, another map. So here I want another map of str and texture. And both does not exist. Textures. So I need to include defines and include raylib. Okay. So in this, I am still hesitating. Okay. In this, I want to be able to load a texture, to put it there, and to get the texture. So in order to load, I will create an exported function, actually, JAPI load texture. The question is how I want to access to the data. The simplest way is to make everything static. And I think I could start like this. It's not very good, but it's not that bad either. Or I could not make it static, but use a singleton too, which is not better, but at least it is not static. Would a singleton work through a DLL? I'm not sure about that. Or I could use an asset locator pattern, which is a complicated way to make a singleton. Okay, let's start with the simplest way. Let's make everything static. So this should be static, this should be static too. Load texture will just have path, I think. And yeah, and it will bring back a texture. Actually, it won't bring back a texture, it will just store it in there. And maybe, yeah, it will just store it in there. But I would need, well, actually no, it should be okay. So in order to implement it, it's quite easy. I just have to do something like texture equal load texture path.cstr and put this texture. Yeah, of course. The point is name are mixing. Could I use something like this? Yeah. And I would put this in function. So I need a path, but I also need a name for the texture. So and I want to pass const references here. Oh, sorry. So, and I will change this. Okay, so I want the name first, then the path. Fine, let's use this. And so in my map, which is called textures, insert, maybe not insert. Do we have something like add, not push, maybe? Or try and place. And place. I could do a pair here, like name and texture. Okay, so this will load my texture and put it there. So now, so I need it to be exposed, and now I need a way to get it. So again, I will use a static function. It will take a texture, get, and it will just take a name. And this will just return texture at name. Okay, fine. For now, I actually copy it, I think. As I told you, it's just ints, so it's okay to copy everything around. And let's see if it's working. So I can come back to my scene, which is there. And so here I can use load. I need the asset manager. Assets manager. And I will try something like assets load texture. I will call it BG sunset. And I don't need to, I just need to load it. So what's the problem now? I cannot find my unordered map. Static, the function itself is static. Oh, I know, I'm just dumb. Okay, it is just that because this is static, I have to define it as static. I have to define it in the CPP file. I already did this actually. So texture here, and I should, okay. Yeah, I was just okay, now it's working. So it's loading rightfully the texture. And now I just have to display it. So let's display it using draw texture. So if I go back here, I should be able to call render draw texture. Okay, that's it. So it's working, but I cannot see the texture. So the texture is loaded, but I don't see it. This is a problem. This should call my texture. Oh, but actually I'm not passing a texture here. What I am passing? I'm passing texture, but there is nothing in texture. Okay, I load the texture here, and maybe what I could do also is say that the texture I store here will be asset manager get BG sunset. Actually, I cannot just write get because I will get other kind of stuff, so I will have to call this get texture. Okay, yeah, I was loading this texture, but nothing was in it. So now, okay, I have my texture. Actually, it's not at the right place, so I should put it at 0 and 0. Okay, and now I don't remember the size of it. Like something like that. Okay, not bad. Okay, this is my texture. This is my sunset background. It's not that beautiful, but it's fine. So I have something that is loading. So that's good. I can draw something. And yeah, I want to change this name. So it's using static stuff. For now, let's say it's good for now, and I may change this later. I just want to change this function name. Get texture. I'm not sure I have this number of iteration cancel. I think is trying to modify other stuff. There must be a lot of things called get in this code, in the Raylib code, so I will just change it by hand. Here, here, and not in my renderer. Yeah, and it should be enough. Okay, fine. Okay, I have my texture. Oh, I'm copying my texture all around, but as I told you, it's just some hints, so it should be fine. I can render a texture. And now, I'll do some other stuff in order to have a sprite and try to draw things in an organized way later. For now, I just want to check my asset manager is okay. I think it's good. There are two things I can do to improve a little my asset manager. The first thing is, instead of copying my texture here, I could pass a const reference to the texture. It should not change anything. It would actually copy the texture in the where is it? Here. But if I want to get a reference, I can get it this way, and it won't take memory. So let's pass a const reference here. So I have to remake my files, and usually it doesn't like this. It doesn't like when you change the DLL headers. So let's see if I delete this. Rerun CMake. Oh, it doesn't like it at all. So maybe let's remove everything. The point is I have to re-download everything, but what is it? Const reference here, const reference here. Okay. Okay, so now it's building. Classical with CMake, and also there's something I actually forgotten, and it's very important to do. Here I load the texture, so this texture will be loaded on the GPU. The point is, it is not unloaded at the end of my program. Okay, this element or all the numbers that are in there would disappear. It's fine, it's just ints, so it's very easy to deallocate for the CPU. But it's actually still on the GPU, so I have to unload it. So I could do something. I could create, in my asset manager, I could create an unload function that would unload all texture here, and just decide to unload everything either at the end of the game, this would be the safer, or at the end of the scene. The point is, I don't want to unload it at the end of the game, because it would mean that all my texture are loaded at once. at the beginning of the game, or each time I load a scene. So I would actually prefer to unload my texture at the end of a scene. The point is, if I just unload all textures at the end of the scene, I will have some problems. I will show you why. So let's take paint. You remember, I have actually a stack of scenes. So let's say we have two scenes. The first one is, actually the first one is on the bottom is a scene game. And let's say we have a scene game menu. Maybe I would load a texture here, like PG sunset. And here I would load another texture, like, I don't know, BG menu. When I want to unload this, I want to unload this. But I don't want to unload this texture. Given, I must add something, given this scene is transparent. If this scene is transparent, when I draw it, I also draw the scene that is underlying. And it makes me think to something, actually. We'll see that later. Okay. So here my problem is when I want to unload this, I want to unload this file, but not unload this file. So I have to keep track on which scene each file is loaded. So that when I unload one scene, I only unload the files that exist in this scene, okay? So this is what I will do now. I think the best way to do it is to pass an identifier in the load texture part, so a scene identifier, and to keep in a new map the name of the textures that have been loaded in this scene. So I will have a new unordered map, and in this unordered map I will have it will be called loaded scene texture, or maybe scene loaded texture. And I will keep the name of it, so it's a string. And here, yeah, there are several. I can do several choices. I can use an enum. The point is using an enum. An enum is here I am in the engine, and this enum should just exist in the game because all scenes are in the game. So I would have to import my enum from the game to the engine, and this is not something I want. I want everything to be imported in the other direction. The game can import the engine, but the engine cannot import the game. So I could use a string, but the problem with strings is you can misspell your string. So what I will use here is a int. I'll just check, yeah, I define, so I have my hints here. I will use a int, and in my scenes, I will define an enum that I will convert to ints. So let's define this enum now. So I go in iScene, and here with I32, it's required to include defines. Okay, to scene ID. I will create a function called toSceneID that will take an enum. So here I will create my enum. And yeah, the first scene will be called game. Or maybe I can just call it, I will call it with the same name, even if there is yeah, something I repeat. Okay, so there will be an ID, so my scene game will be the scene 0. And so now here I pass a scene name, and it will just return it as I32, so it's just a static cast. Okay. Oh, actually, there's a misspelling here. I have to refactor this. Yeah, I want to use H. Okay, so my toScene ID is ready. And now what I want to do in my asset manager is I want to pass here a scene ID when I load the texture. And I want to create a function unload scene texture that will take a scene ID as a parameter. And this will unload all texture from there that contains those textures. So what I have to do here is go to the asset manager. Well, okay. So I need to add my scene ID here. And also I need to define my another map. So I32 str. This is just the name of the texture. And I have called this scene loaded textures. Okay. So now when I in place a texture, in scene loaded texture, I will also in place, sorry, not in place. I will also in place the ID of my scene and the name of the scene. The name of the texture, sorry. Oh, the ID is this, not I32. Okay, fine. And now I have to implement this, if it wants to. Yeah, there's a bug here. Or maybe I forgot something. No texture, yeah, this should be void actually. So void. And I will go through all my scene loaded textures. And if I find one, I unload the texture from there. And I should also actually remove the texture, I think. Yeah, also I should also remove the texture. So for scene loaded texture, so it will be for so I call it texture, but it's actually a compound with the texture name and texture and the texture itself. What's the problem with this loaded texture? Oh, it's because I must be an asset manager. Okay. So for all textures, if texture.first which is the ID, is equal to scene ID, then I want to unload the texture and I want to remove the texture from it, which name is our second element. So I will first take the texture, unload the texture, unload texture, get texture of texture.name.second actually. Oh yeah, I need to get the texture in order to unload it, so I use this. Get will just take it from its name. And then I want to remove, we have a remove. So I have remove, erase. Yeah, I need just a value, so texture.second should work. Yeah. I could call this texture ID actually, because yeah, I would call this texture ID. It will be more easier to understand. So texture ID. Okay, so I go through all textures. If I find a texture that ID, actually this should be done afterwards. So what I will do is I will create a vector of names to delete, and then I will do this. Because if I delete it now, well actually let me think. So I got a texture ID. I unload the texture and I erase it. Actually it should work because I'm not going through the texture list itself, so it should be okay. So let's try this. Let's compile. It should not compile. So again, load texture does not exist. If I go to scene game here, so here I must pass an ID to the scene. So this is where I will use this. To scene ID this. So to scene ID, scene name, scene game. Okay. And in the load now I want to use asset manager, unload scene textures, and I want to pass this too. This is a little long. Maybe I try to find a better way to do this. Okay, it seems to compile. So let's see if it works now. So now I'm loading my texture, and as you can see it here, it is loading, and the identifier is 3. So if I close it, unloaded texture data from VRAM, so it's working actually. We're unloading it. So it should be okay. And I erase it also from the list of textures, so it should be fine. I could check, or it should be fine. I would have to test it with several scenes, but I think it should be. I think it should work. So that's it. Now we can unload our textures after we have loaded them at the beginning of the scene. I think it's good, so I don't think we have to do more for this. So yeah, we have our asset manager. It's using a dirty static function, but it's working. So that's fine. In the next video, we'll try to organize our code. I will want to organize the way sprites are displayed, and just after to create some physical entities so I can have a player that can collide with other stuff. Okay? So see you in the next video. Bye!